We need noise. Reason, judicial process has failed us, has failed Robert. And I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about some rage I have, and I'm going to talk about some hope. The rage I have is reunited every time I go back and read some of that trial transcript that led to Robert's conviction. I'm going to take issue with one thing that my dear friend Brian Wharton said. He said, it was really so simple and we made it complicated. But what he doesn't know, because he wasn't in the courtroom, is that the lead prosecutor stood up and told the jury, this is a simple case, over and over again, simple case. That man is evil. He did all these horrible things. Convict him. And the horrible things, the proof of the horrible things was A, this shaken baby syndrome diagnosis that has since been discredited, and wild speculation by people that presume this man guilty based on his disabilities. He was an impaired but devoted father who had fought for custody of his daughter. I want you to ask each other, how many men you know volunteer for a paternity test? That's what Robert did. And Robert started advocating to be in his daughter's life before she was even born. He fought for this. He wanted to turn his life around. And the way he's conveyed it to me over the years is that Nikki was an angel sent to him to get himself straightened out. He fought for her, and he won custody a few months before her death. What he hadn't been a part of were the 2 years of her life where she was chronically ill. Taken to the ER, taken to neurologists, taken to ear and throat and nose specialists, all these problems, multiple strains of antibiotics that didn't fix the problems. She had breathing apnea when she would inexplicably collapse, cease breathing, turn blue, and have to be revived. At trial, part of that simple story that was told to the jury is, oh, these were just little kid things. Nikki had some medical conditions, but nothing serious. This is one of many lies put together to vilify a man who didn't act like a quote-unquote normal parent because he had undiagnosed autism that is evident from his earliest childhood records, if somebody had bothered to take this poor kid and get him properly assessed. But that trial enrages me because nothing in there has anything to do with the Robert I've known over the past 10 years of trying to fight against the attempts to kill him. It also boggles the mind, the due process violations, the things that were allowed for people to say and speculate without any basis in reality. But that trial was all based on shaken baby syndrome, and there were doctors willing to say, oh, if you see these symptoms, definitely that's proof that violent shaking occurred. And I'm telling you, there are still people who believe that. But they are not people keeping up with the science. The actual scientific inquiry that has rebutted this hypothesis that was thrown out there in the 1970s and has unfortunately been used to ruin a lot of families. But no one, other than Robert, is facing the prospect of execution based on this flawed. The trial was one thing. But over the last 10 years, people have alluded to this. We have amassed a mountain, Nikki, something that was never investigated. There was a shaken baby diagnosis made. She was taken off life support without Robert's knowledge or consent while he was barred from the hospital. And then an autopsy was performed hastily the next day after he'd already been arrested. That medical examiner, who still works for Dallas County in the very same job, has admitted under oath she never looked at any of Mickey's medical history. She never looked at the CT scans of her head showing no significant trauma, never looked at the toxicology report she'd ordered showing serious medications still in this child's bloodstream that had been prescribed to her that week by doctors who missed a very serious pneumonia that was ravishing her lungs. A lung disease and respiratory suppressing medications, including codeine, a narcotic given to a 2-year-old, it's no longer a mystery what happened to Nikki. It was not shaking. It was her chronic, serious health conditions that were missed by well-meaning doctors, perhaps, but it was missed. A crime didn't occur, okay? But guess what? Here's more of my rage. The people on this stage know more about that evidence than any court that has ever written about the case, than any public elected official that has been fighting for this execution, and I will name check a few of them. Since 2016, when I began representing Robert, which I will point out was the first time in 14 years any lawyer investigated his claim that he was innocent. Think about that. Someone pointed out his appointed defense lawyer conceded it was a classic shaken baby case. That's in the trial record with every single juror. Yes, it's a shaken baby case. Don't listen to my client. Can you imagine? And guess what? The judge who appointed that lawyer was the one who stripped Robert of his parental rights after Nikki was already dead, and whose son was one of the lead prosecutors. This is a small town justice in Texas. All right, but that DA that led the charge to get this shaken baby diagnosis case taken to, the level of the death penalty, he's gone. The new DA, who was there at the time of trial, I thought, she's got to be willing to sit down with me, hear what the real evidence is. Every time, I've been denied. The elected DA in Anderson County, Allison Mitchell, has refused ever to meet with me or any of my intermediaries to hear about the complex evidence. And you'll say, oh, well, she could just study that on her own. No, it is reports from pediatric radiologists, neuropathologists, toxicologists, et cetera, et cetera. You can't just sit down as a lawyer and figure this stuff out. She wouldn't talk to me. But you can go back and listen to her testimony in this building behind us and see how well she knew the case when she set that execution date last year. She couldn't answer a single question about what had been said at trial versus what the new evidence was. She couldn't even identify the expertise of her own hired gun expert. She didn't know but he had the answers. It was mind-boggling. I urge you to listen to that recording. And one of our brave lawmakers, I believe it was Representative Harrison, who spoke through Nan today. He kept asking her, I'm a little troubled that you're setting this execution date and you seem to be so unfamiliar with the case. All right, a miracle happened. You've heard some about the miracle. Why are we here again? When all that came out, right here in this Capitol. Well, that DA decided to hand over responsibility to the Attorney General's office. That was in June. A week later, they're 1 week on the case, this complicated case that's been going on for 10 years. They seek another execution date. Would they meet with me? No. Every request I've made directly to the Attorney General's office and through intermediaries, denied. Guess what? We've also offered to meet with the medical examiner whose report from 23 years ago, they keep waving around saying, here's the truth. This autopsy report has been completely debunked. And that medical examiner has admitted under oath the litany of things she never considered. But would she sit down and talk to more experienced experts who could show her what they were seeing in Nikki's lung tissue, in the blood work, the bleeding disorder, the toxicology showing these fatal levels of respiratory suppressing drugs in Nikki's system. Would she sit down with NFS? What do you think? No. All right, so I'm kind of mad. And I feel a little like a hobbit fighting against orcs, okay? Because the orcs are out there on the internet spewing garbage day in, day out, lying about Robert, lying about this case. You should be enraged. A lot of these people are elected representatives. I have no clue what they're doing. They certainly know nothing about the new evidence, and they never mention it. They keep reciting that autopsy report, but then they've added a whole new layer of lies. The new lie is that Nikki was beaten to death. All right, let me point something out to you. If Nikki had been beaten to death, there would have been no shaken baby syndrome diagnosis. The reason that thing exists, it came into being because of mysterious collapses of infants and toddlers where doctors couldn't figure out, and there was a speculation, maybe this explained this internal condition when you didn't see anything on the outside. That is not the way the law of physics works, though. Who spent years diagnosing this thing, sending probably thousands of people to prison for something that was a speculation, and the very man who threw it out there as a hypothesis disavowed it and was shocked that people were being accused of criminal actions based on his thought experiment. So I have all this rage about the lies, and I need your help fighting back against this. Learn the case. Anything you want to see. I mean, I am so transparent, it's not even funny, because I'm not a real defense attorney. I'm about telling the truth. And I have nothing but righteous rage on behalf of my client, Robert, because I don't think he's potentially innocent. I know he's innocent. I know it. And I know there was no crime. And now we need some hope. And part of my hope comes, I'm way too long-winded all the time, but I get hope looking out and seeing these faces. And I hope you represent the 10 more people you will go and tell about Robert's case. You will look for accurate information about his case, and you will share it. You will fight back against these trolls, these orcs on the internet spreading garbage to try to justify a wrongful execution. Who does that? How is that justice? How is that protecting the sanctity of life? How is that honorable in the face of the tragic death of beloved Nikki? It is, quite frankly, disgusting. So I will say we will continue as the legal team to do everything we can to urge those in positions of power to acknowledge, finally, the overwhelming evidence that Robert is innocent and that no crime occurred. As Texans, like you, I am one, I'm interested in things like truth and justice. And I vehemently reject the concept that a state-sanctioned murder of an innocent man can further either of those goals. And I have the very great honor to share with you a statement that was conveyed to me by John Grisham. I imagine that's a name you're familiar with. What you may not know is he has publicly come out and expressed outrage about this case and his commitment to writing his next book about Robert's case. Look it up. Plan to buy it. But here's what Mr. Grisham has to say to us. I am here with you in spirit. I am working hard on a book about Robert's case where the ending has yet to be written. Unlike my other 2 nonfiction books, I'm writing Robert's story in real time, hoping we can bend his story away from the tragedy it has been for over 20 years now. There is the tragedy of Nikki's death, the tragedy of her father being falsely accused based on junk science, There is the tragedy of people in power so far being unwilling to admit that mistakes were made, terrible mistakes, with a man's life hanging in the balance. There is still time to prevent a tragic ending. My hope is that authorities in Texas with the power to act will finally reject this indefensible conviction and see that Robert gets the new trial he has sought for decades. This is Grisham, along with Gretchen, along with the whole world, is watching, Texas! Do not execute an innocent man, please! And I'll tell you, people, there are some really powerful voices up here on the stage, and we have committed to making ourselves available to journalists who want to ask us questions. We will stay here until we collapse, but we like to do it in the shade. So thank you, and please learn the case. Fight back.
We have just heard from the lead lawyer for
that has questions. We will meet you over in the shade. Thank you.
Robert Robertson, and that's the end of the rally. And we have all these people here.
I know it's hot. Okay. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.